Okay. Good morning. Thank you for coming to this talk about some tools that I've developed for managing workflows in quantum chemistry. First of all, what is quantum chemistry? Quantum chemistry is what you would do if you have a molecular system and you want accurate and directly physics-based answers about that system. For instance, if you have a drug, how well does it bind into a protein docking site? Answer, about 13 kcal per mole. Or what is the resistance to a ring breathing motion like this? Or what is the energetic barrier to nitrogen inversion? And here I have to thank the organizers for providing me with a ready-made graphic. So all of these are questions that can be answered through quantum chemistry. And the means by which one gets these answers is by running one or more of quantum chemistry packages like these. These are very large code bases, often multi-million lines, that have been developed over recent decades. And they're written nearly exclusively in Fortran or C++. And they're going to remain written in compiled languages because the scaling of quantum chemical methods is so costly. If one were to apply the laws of physics directly to a chemical system, you'd get a method called full CI, which actually scales as n factorial, where n is the size of the system. By applying some approximations, we can get down to n to the 7th. And these are the lowest scaling methods that we really trust. There are more choices at n to the 4th. And then within quantum chemistry, about the best scaling that you're going to get is n to the 4th. And this list is by no means complete. So most of these methods work better for some subsets of chemical reactions than others. And so the choice of which method to apply to your problem or which model chemistry is a choice that's going to require some scientific expertise. Most users of these quantum chemistry packages are able to just treat them as black boxes. You put a text input file into the program, you wait between seconds or weeks, and you get a text output file out of it. And it's important to note that each of these quantum chemistry packages, these input files are essentially in their own unique scripting languages. So even once you've made the decision of what model chemistry, that still has to be interpreted into dozens or more options. That still has to be expressed into dozens of more options and put into the correct format. So actually running these quantum chemistry programs is going to require some operational expertise. Then when you have your output file, it's going to give you a number of fundamental quantum chemical quantities, and hopefully one of these is the scientific result that you're looking for. But more often than not, you actually have to combine these quantities in order to get your final result. And so that can be up to half a page of arithmetic. Now, once you have this workflow running smoothly, it often happens that you want to apply the same procedures to a number of different molecules. And so the running of all of these jobs and the organizing of the results is going to require some organizational expertise. So looking at this whole picture, there's one area that requires considerable experience and knowledge of the chemical literature, and then a number of little roles into which Python can be profitably interjected. And it is in these roles that the QCDB module was designed to fulfill. We'll take a brief tour of these capabilities, starting first with the intriguing arithmetic arrow. These fundamental quantum chemistry quantities we've seen can take up to weeks to generate, and so we want to get as much use out of them as possible. Fortunately, there are a lot of identities between these fundamental quantum chemistry quantities, and so I've plotted up a number of these just to show that they form a graph. For the most part, quantum chemists simply know all of these interrelations, and so they take their output file and a calculator and apply all these in order to get the results that they want. But QCDB has actually programmed all of these up as functions that can be applied to portions of a Pandas data frame in order to do this automatically. So if you take a giant data frame where the numbers are extracted directly from quantum chemical output files, they're indexed by some reaction quantities and the model chemistry and some options, and run them through the whole set of Pandas functions, you can actually get out every possible accessible scientific model chemistry result for a given reaction. And those are what is shown in each row here. And because this is Pandas, it's very easy to do this in parallel for a number of different reactions, which leads us directly into the role of QCDB in organizing chemical databases, where here, a chemical database, I'm defining simply as a collection of Cartesian geometries for a number of molecules, and then best scientific results for energetics of certain reactions, and then just some information about how that best scientific result was acquired and its literature citation. So databases like these are very easily auto-documented using Sphinx. And if you were to actually import QCDB, you can initialize a database object simply by feeding it this file. So once you have a database object, you can load in all of the quantum chemical results obtained from Pandas. And then we can start to look at the results. Here we have 3 model chemistries. These are rather obscure acronyms, but quantum chemistry just lives and breathes acronyms. These model chemistries are actually only differing by one letter, D, T, and Q, but this can be an order of magnitude or more in actual computational cost. So these 3 model chemistries can look at overall statistics, overall error statistics, D, T, and Q, absolute error, relative error for both the whole database or perhaps a chemically relevant subset like all neutral molecules. QCDB is hooked up directly to Matplotlib, so we can also plot these summary statistics. Here for D, T, and Q, we can see that on the whole, the error is reducing, as shown by the height of the thick gray bars, whereas, for instance, for some chemical subsets, the error might be increasing, shown by the thin red bars. To look at the errors for individual members of a chemical database, we can use these plots I call thread plots. It makes it easy to trace a single database member between the model chemistries that you're examining. It's useful for outliers. And then for some databases, can actually first partition by structural motif. So everything in this square here are all tryptophan amino acid contacts. And then each individual member is colored by its error. So we can see that this model chemistry as a whole is doing well for some structural profiles, where the color is nearly white, and then poorly for other structures, which are more heavily colored. So all these plots are nearly publication quality, and so for publication, along with figures, one needs tables. These are only slightly more complicated to specify. We have here first the strings for a first row of column headers, second row of column headers. We want it to print the values within the table, and then any restrictions on the data set, either the overall or some chemical subset or a different error quantity. And then for the rows, iterating over some quantum chemical fields. So these commands will generate a fairly decent looking table. And then because QCDB is hooked up to Matplotlib, it's easy to just specify a couple more rows, tell it what types of figures you want to see, and then let it auto-generate all these individual figures and include them into the table. And then if you have a lot of data to analyze and don't want to haul out a whole set of highlighters. You can just write a simple function and let it color code all of your results. So database analysis tools like these have enabled us to readily deal with far greater quantities of data. In a particular subfield of chemistry, this is the most popular chemical database. It has 22 members. But with tools like we have, we can deal with far larger systems. So this is a database of all of the structurally unique amino acid contacts in the protein databank. There are over 3,000 of these systems. And the QCDB database tools enable us to cover a far greater span of the chemical space within this subfield of reactions. So if one were to consider just computational efficiency, a certain model chemistry might be best run through multiple of these quantum chemistry packages. But because of the human overhead to learning all the different input file formats, what often happens is that one only learns one or two. So QCDB is making initial forays into interoperability among these quantum chemical packages. That is mixing and matching the fundamental quantum chemistry quantities that each of these output in order to get greater efficiency. So one thing one can do is just automate some tasks. If you look at this blue string, it is pretty cryptic, but it's just a very condensed representation of a procedure that one wants done. We want one quantum chemistry package, Sci4, to run a method, MP2, with two variations on a particular option, and then correct it with another method, CCSD parentheses T, run with another package, C4, with only one value for that option, and then add on another correction that involves some fragmentation of the molecule. So right now you would go ahead and write 6 input files, feed them all to Sci4, write 3 more input files, feed them all to C4. But by instead teaching Python how to do this procedure and allowing it to call the executables for these two programs, one can accomplish the same amount of work in a single input file. One can also access new capabilities. One quantum chemistry program, C4, has the ability to do detailed analyses of a potential energy surface, but it doesn't have a particular method called DFT, whereas Sci4 does have DFT, but not the analytical capabilities. And so together these two methods, through a simple input file, can yield a scientific result, in this case a vibrational spectrum, with results superior to what either package can do on its own. Finally, we can get some efficiency gains for a method that is constructed from a number of different quantities. Here, Sci4 doesn't have all of those quantities. MolPro does have all the pieces, but it does one of them less efficiently than Sci4. And so together, they can do the task in less time with a simpler input file instead of these 5 input files that you started with. So that concludes the tour of what QCDB's capabilities are for facilitating the command line workflow in quantum chemistry. But you may have noticed that we used a number of slightly obscure acronyms and a lot of calls directly to Python. So for users who would prefer to simply browse quantum chemical data, we have programmed all of this up into a website where pages are generated on the fly through Python scripts and calls to QCDB and Matplotlib. So on this page, you can look at a particular chemical reaction, search for methane, and then choose a particular reaction, a benzene-methane contact. You can get some stoichiometric information, and then some manipulatable structural information, can export these geometries as NumPy arrays or as partial input files to quantum chemical programs. And then we can see how well this reaction is predicted by a number of quantum chemical methods. These are the ones that do it very poorly. All of this information is also available in a table. We can sort by error. And also available are literature citations for each of these quantities, including DOI information. Can filter the accessible methods. And then we'll just choose one through a link to another page where here we look at one particular model chemistry applied to a number of different molecules and get out a number of summary statistics, including their definitions. And then we see how well this model chemistry does for a number of interactions. And these plots are downloadable, have some potential energy surface plots, and then again, the original data. And in particular, every method here will have a full literature and DOI citation. One feature that's just in beta is the ability to generate quantum chemical input files. Here we choose what systems, what chemical systems, what model chemistries are involved, and then values for a number of options, and then just generate a tarball, which you can download and submit on your local clusters. Or if, on the other hand, you have some quantum chemical data and you want to make use of QCDB's visualization facilities, you can upload it as a CSV file, give us some information about how your data was run, wait for it to convert into its own internal format, and then it's going to provide you a series of links. And these are links on the website directly to your data. And so your newly uploaded data is now a first class and can use all of QCDB's plotting and analytical facilities. And then finally, there is one more page for when you want to do very flexible comparisons for different model chemistries. Can load up a number of choices of model chemistry and options. And then look at those for different subsets of chemical reactions. And then you have a fully interactive plot, which is again available for download. So in conclusion, I hope to have shown that QCDB provides a number of facilities to help you from becoming overwhelmed with all of your quantum chemistry data. That website I showed is, the interactive website I showed is here. And at the moment, the best place to get the code is actually a subdirectory of the GitHub Sci4 repository. I'd like to thank the funding agencies that sponsored this research, and particularly the other Sci4 developers, since there's been a lot of back and forth between QCDB and Sci4. And thank you all for your attention, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Amazing. We have lots of time again for questions.
So, how clean do you find that the data is inside the database? Do you have problems with calculations that give erroneous data or are not reproducible?
Can you repeat the question?
How clean do I find the data in the database, and are there problems with erroneous quantities or those that are not reproducible? For the moment, all the data that's in there is what I've generated, And so I have some faith in it, and it's been through various pre-processing scripts to ensure that it is in good shape and accurately run. But you're very correct that that is a definite thing to worry about.
There's a question here.
Hi. I was just curious to what degree is the project welcoming new contributors and open source?
More contributors are always welcome. At this stage, it's been mostly stuff that I run to aid my own research and those of grad students in the near vicinity, and so it's institutional structure is not terribly well developed for accepting new contributions, but I'd be glad to talk. I am scheduled to be working on this full-time more soon.
Hi. When it comes to a lot of these like high-level quantum methods, like just even dealing with like C4 and Ultra, all of these, they have a lot of internal parameters that you have to be really careful about. Yeah. So whenever you deal with interoperability, like how certain are you, or how easily is it built in to make sure that you're really comparing valid things to one another?
I didn't go into it in this, but I'm trying to be extremely careful about that. I mean, just the options don't even map nicely between different quantum chemical packages. So both there are certain ways of dealing with that I've built in, and I'm definitely cognizant of the problem, and I'm trying to keep on top of it.
Questions? Yeah.
So in the past, when I ran QM, I used Games US, which, as you know, is you get the source for it as opposed to being a black box. How would your workflow work with a program like that?
Most of the programs that I actually work with, we have access to the source. And that is very useful sometimes for figuring out exactly what the program is doing. It's more that the non-developers do treat them just as black boxes.
Any more questions? No? So let's thank our speaker again.